good evening and welcome back. So COVID infections and deaths in Florida plunge. Good news. Despite it having most cases of Kent variant in the US, I do find it hilarious that they still call it the Kent variant. It's like, so where do you think the actual Kent variant came from? Now, of course, if you know anything about UK immigration, especially how it's been happening during lockdown, then you'd be well informed to realise that quite a lot of it seems to be arriving in Kent. And where has this come from? Well, it's travelled across the entirety of Europe, of course. So if we were really trying to name stuff where it comes from, then for a start, it's the Chinese virus, or the Wu flu, if you will. But oh no, we're not allowed to call that, it's racist. So we're not calling it the Kent variant either. Where did it really come from? Well, we don't know. And that's kind of a problem with an open border policy, or at least not enforcing the borders to stop illegal immigration. But yeah, definitely the Kent variant, guys. Definitely. So it's been going on in the US and responsible for half the cases in Florida now, despite being 4% a few months ago, and yet deaths and total cases continue to drop, despite it being 30 to 100% more deadly and more transmissible as well. And it's going to raise the R rate above 1, and that's why, of course, Mr. Chris Whitty, I nearly called him shitty then, good old Chris says, we can't ease up too quickly, and of course Halfcock's getting on that as well, because things will quickly spiral out of control, and it costs so many lives. Let's ignore livelihoods and just focus on this, which is definitely true, even though all the data is to the contrary. Now, the point is this, for me, is that, the effects of COVID seem to be just like a bad flu. That seems to be the effects. Who does it take out? Take out the elderly, which is what you would expect from bad flu. The coronaviruses are a type of flu, similar to the rhinovirus. This is just a different coronavirus. So it is. The symptoms are basically the same as well as flu and influenza. It's exactly what you would expect. However, this one seems to have taken out older people a little bit earlier than they otherwise would have passed away. Okay, cool. As you say, the average death or age of death for people who died from COVID is still above the average life expectancy anyway. So it's cut it short by not much. Well, I mean, if you base it on average life expectancy, they're already on borrowed time, if you will. That's kind of a morbid view, but nonetheless seemingly accurate. So, okay, it's cut it short by a few months, maybe a year. It's kind of natural selection, if you will. So, having culled that area of the vulnerable population and taken out all your year's deaths in one go, essentially, what do you think that does 1 year later? Do you think that maybe it will then revert back to normal, and then you wouldn't get as many excess deaths, as I say, or just as many deaths in general, even if it's still around? Because I certainly do. And do you think that could time in for the 2 weeks to flatten the curve is then extended for as long as they can, in order to then time it so that at that point the damage is already done, and they can say that they were the reason that everybody's doing better now, even though they're not? Because that's what I'm thinking. And so when you're seeing it in Florida as well, to go, well, yeah, they've never had a mask mandate, so it's clearly nothing to do with that, and they decided to keep it all down to the individual to decide on what they want to do. So, it looks like government control isn't the answer. Then, of course they're going to be coming out. So, of course you got Chris Whitty over here, just trying to push it a little bit further to try and see, well, how much more will people take? How many more other cheeky laws can they sneak in while we're all distracted? How much more reliant can they try and make us on them and their reallocation of resources, as well as just quantitative easing, which is getting out of control in order to devalue all the savings. So the only ones with money are either the very wealthy, who are getting bailouts anyway, or just the state, in which case just to destroy any savings as a tax on the middle class as well. So that's the way I see it. It's completely predictable that this has happened in Florida. It should happen around the rest of the world, that it kind of eases up after a year. Unless, of course, you're, I suppose, flattening the curve has allowed it to mutate into a more deadly variant, which is most certainly feasible, as that is the point of flattening the curve. That you don't get them all out in one go and you're done with it. Instead, you wait, and during that waiting period, it's more of an incubation period, which enables mutations to take place, And then you worry later on because by the time it's gone around the country, it's a new virus which is going to go back around the country and back around the country and back around the country, becoming endemic, becoming seasonal. And that's now the latest fear. And that only happened because that is what was actively encouraged. So yeah, of course Florida is doing fine. As they say, Florida leads US in cases of the Kent variant, accounting for half of all new cases. Despite this, state has seen a staggering 75% drop in cases since January. The latest figures suggest Britain's outlook may be better than initially predicted when the Kent variant first emerged last September and fueled the second wave. However, if we move down, I mean, you've got some people speaking sense, thankfully, out of Alabama, for example, and they're Birmingham, as they say, with Suzanne Judd, a PhD epidemiologist at the University of Alabama at Birmingham's School of Public Health. I think we just keep watching the data. If cases continue to drop in Florida despite circulating variants, maybe the variant won't be as bad as we predicted. Yeah, brilliant. Can you believe that? A scientist actually following the scientific method. Yeah, it's like actually believe in the science instead of the scientists. I mean, believe in the science is a bit misleading anyway. It's the scientific method, which is to be able to use past models with predictive capability to accurately predict the future. That's the way. And you just go where the evidence takes you. Which isn't a very popular stance these days, obviously. But so this is why we have to avoid speculating on variants until we have the data. Brilliant. So the good news from Florida is an encouraging sign for the rest of us. It doesn't mean America is out of the woods, but it does suggest we could emerge sooner than we thought. Wrote Andrew Romano as well. So, jolly good, but... Robert Challen from University of Exeter said, in the community, death from COVID-19 is still a rare event, but the B117 variant raises the risk. Coupled with its ability to spread rapidly, this makes B117, so Kent variant, a threat that should be taken seriously. Oh no, we've got to have some more fear-mongering over here. And better yet, of course, with Whitty, that he made clear that because of the highly effective vaccines now in the arms of the most vulnerable, the scale of the next wave epidemic will be nothing like what we've seen over the course of this winter. Oh yeah, don't you know you're so lucky that it's all down to the government and what they've been doing. And you've got to thank your lucky stars every day that we have such a good government overlooking us, that it's all down to them. Off you fuck, Chris. Off you fuck. Moreover, he maintained that slower was safer when it came to easing the curbs. Yes, as well as government overreach, isn't it? Because it gives more time for the vaccine program to get even wider coverage, telling MPs he would strongly advise they stick to the cautious plan. Cool, you can advise it. The government can advise it for the rest of us. And then we can decide to do whatever we bloody well please. Batting away calls for lockdown to be loosened sooner, he warned, if you open up too fast, a lot more people die, a lot more people. I think it's very easy to forget quite how quickly things can turn bad if you don't keep a very, very close eye on it. And this is, to me, is just a great little realization they're having, maybe, or almost a Freudian slip, if you will, to say that, yeah, if the government doesn't keep a tight leash on what information is circulating and what people are doing, it can get very bad very quickly because they can realize that the government isn't necessary. Yes. So you do have to keep a very, very close eye on it, don't you? You do have to limit those freedoms, otherwise they realise they're far better off than without you. He warned against number 10 unlocking too quickly and repeating earlier mistakes, adding, if you look at the history of this all around the world, it's full of leaders who wish they had acted quicker and then be more careful as they take things off. It depends, mate, because you can choose your statistics wherever you want. We can do it the other way if you wish. It's really up to you. Obviously, Florida's doing very fine for itself. But, again, we got the study out of EEC, I believe, saying, yeah, it's been different all around the world and it doesn't seem to be correlated to the nation's social healthcare or private healthcare. It just seems to be a bit hit and miss. And we can't really prove it one way or the other. So, yeah, you can say you can prove it one way or the other, and then it can be done equally and opposite to you as well. So, it seems to me to be the best case is, if you don't know what you're doing, stop telling other people that you know what you're doing, and instead, leave them to decide for themselves. That way, they are also responsible, and they can decide their own risk tolerance. By all means, inform them and try to persuade them, but don't force them. And that's it. But that's it for me. So, as always, let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think that, yeah, as you'd expect, all the more vulnerable people have already been taken out or they've survived, and now it's done? Or do you think, no, there's something else, which is definitely down to government intervention, which has been so effective, always, at saving lives instead of taking them? That'll be a first. Either way, let me know down below. Always intrigued to you guys have to say. And as always, until next time, have a good one.